Have you ever looked at your kid, they're forgetting things, refusing to do what you ask, or just kind of shutting down, and you think, why are they being so lazy? It's a super frustrating moment, and I think a lot of us have been there. So I wanted to dive into this because I started wondering, what if it's not laziness at all? What if it's something way deeper?
Man, this quote, it really just stopped me in my tracks. It's asking us to take a breath and just consider that maybe the behavior we're seeing on the outside is just the tip of the iceberg of a huge battle happening on the inside. All right, so first, let's just get on the same page and talk about the common judgment. This is the stuff we've all probably heard, or let's be honest, maybe even said ourselves. These phrases, they're basically part of the standard parenting playbook, right? The idea that being tough is what builds character. We're told that if we just push our kids a little bit more, they'll learn to push through, to endure, to just cope with life's pressures. And this is exactly where things get wires crossed. We see in action, they forget their homework, they refuse to clean their room, they totally shut down. And our first instinct, because of that playbook, is to label it. That's laziness, that's defiance, that's disrespect. But looking at this, you gotta ask, is that what's really going on? So what is really going on? Well, to figure that out, we have to kind of shift our focus from what we see on the outside and try to understand the silent battle that might be happening on the inside. The key word here is silently. It's huge. We expect a kid who's overwhelmed to, act out, make a scene, protest. But a lot of the time, that's not what happens at all. They don't put up their hand and say, hey, I can't handle this. They just stop. They go quiet. They break. Silently. And this brings us right to the heart of it all. We need a new diagnosis for this behavior, one that's less about judgment and more about understanding. And that diagnosis is overload, not laziness. So let's really think about this for a second. What happens if we just take laziness completely off the table as an option? What are we left with? What else could possibly be making a kid forget, refuse, and shut down like that? Well, the answer is something called brain overload. And the most important part of this whole definition is that it's a protective shutdown. This isn't a choice they're making. It's not a flaw in their character. It's their brain's biological response, kind of like a circuit breaker flipping when the whole system gets overloaded with way too much academic, social, or emotional stress. And what's so tough about this is that it creates this awful, vicious cycle. It starts with us applying pressure, right? We think it's going to motivate them. But instead, their brain gets overloaded and it shuts down to protect itself. Then we see that shutdown. We call it laziness. And what do? We apply even more pressure to fix the laziness. And the whole cycle just repeats, and it just gets worse and worse. So, the big question is, how do we break this cycle? That brings us to our last section, the new path. And it takes a totally different approach, a big shift away from adding pressure and toward giving real support. The metaphor here is so simple, but it's really powerful. Just picture a kid who's already struggling under a super heavy backpack. The old way of thinking was to just yell, "Be stronger!" The new understanding is that our job isn't to pile more books on top. It's to help them figure out how to lighten the load. And when you put these two approaches side by side, the difference is just night and day. The old way is all about adding weight, more pressure, demanding they just do it, criticizing when they fail. But the new way, it's all about giving them tools. Instead of more pressure, we show them how to unload. Instead of just demanding, we actually teach them how to focus. And instead of criticizing, we help them understand what's going on. And at the end of the day, this is what it all boils down to. Our job description has changed. It's not about forcing rules on them until they crack. It's about being a leader, a guide who can show them the way through this crazy, complex world without breaking them in the process. And that leaves us with one last, really big question. It's kind of a call to action for every single one of us, parents, teachers, anyone who cares about kids. We're the ones who can change this story from one about laziness to one about overload, from pressure to support. Because if we don't do it, then who will?